Hey, I'm Jen Burns.
And I'm Amy Torito.
And we are here doing Coffee with Craft. Cheers.
Cheers.
We don't do cooking with craft because neither of us cook. So we decided to do Coffee with Craft.
And we go and buy the coffee because we also don't make the coffee.
We both do investment properties. And so we get a lot of questions from our clients about how to get started in investing in real estate. And so we thought we'd do a 3-part series on kind of the high points of investing. And then if you have extra questions, you could always reach out to us and get more information. So Amy, you know, you're talking to a client. What are some of the ways that you can invest in real estate?
Well, some of the ways are low-income properties, short-term rentals, long-term rentals, multifamily, beach condos, the list can go.
Mobile homes.
Yep.
Yeah, basically I think you just kind of start out with what you're comfortable with and what your budget allows. And you're gonna start out in one direction, and that doesn't mean that you have to stick with that your whole investing career.
Right.
You may not like that. It might lead into something else. What I like to say is business breeds business in real estate. The same thing with investing. Like you start investing, you start talking to other investors, and opportunity arises, right? So even though it may not be what you start with, it can lead to other opportunities. So is what they say about mailbox money, about rental property being mailbox money, like true?
Well, now it's going to be Venmo money.
Okay.
It is no longer mailbox money, but it can be. Not necessarily.
Well, first of all, I guess we should clarify what do we mean, but when we say mailbox money.
That the money arrives in your mailbox from your tenant. But now it goes into your Venmo.
Yeah, but it's not just money that arises every month with no pain, no work, no anything. There's a lot that goes into owning rental property.
Lots of expenses and other things like that.
You're still working for your money even though it's a check coming in every month.
Right, exactly. So what are some things that you think people need to know about buying rental properties?
That's a great question. So a couple of things, maybe 3 things that I can think of that first-time investors may not really understand or they may not know. First of all, when you're figuring out all your numbers, when you're going through your sales price and your interest rate and what that monthly payment is going to be, they kind of base it off of like what their home, their personal home, what the interest rate would be. On investment property, that interest rate is always a little bit higher. So even if you have good credit and the lenders are displaying lower interest rates, when you're talking investment property, you're always gonna have a little higher interest rate than a primary residence. So that's one thing that you need to keep in mind. Second thing is when you're negotiating your contract, a lot of times it's customary for a buyer to try to get the seller to pay some of their closing costs. There is a limit, I think it's 2% in seller paid closing for an investor, for an investment loan. So don't go in trying to get all your closing costs paid for and you negotiate that and then your lender says, oh, well, you got $10,000, but you can only use $4,000 or whatever. You need to think of that when you're doing your negotiations. And I think the last thing is you're gonna need 20 to 25% down. Typically, I've seen 25% if you have a relationship with a credit union or a bank or a personal banker, you may be able to get as low as 20% down. But there is no really zero money down investment property loans. One thing that I would like just pro tip here is if you're wanting to get into investment property and you're thinking about moving up to upgrading your personal home, I think that's a great way to get in because you could keep your primary residence as your rental. You get the lower interest rate. Maybe you got in with 3% or 5% down, 0% down if it was RD. Nothing changes with that. You just change your insurance to rental insurance. And then you can upgrade and buy your new house. You tell your lender you're keeping your old house as a rental. You buy your new house, and then you can still buy your new house with 5% down or something like that. So if you're worried, and I know we're gonna get to this in a minute, but if you're kind of worried about that 20 to 25%, if you're coming out of your starter home, keeping that home as your first rental might be the good option. So I know I just kind of talked about like getting that down payment for that first rental, which is one of the hurdles that people go through. What is your advice for first-time investors on where to get that money?
So I do have a lot of clients that ask about that because that's their biggest concern is how am I going to get this money to buy the property? Well, there's a HELOC, which is a home equity line of credit that you'd usually get on your home, is probably the top thing that most people will do if they don't have savings.
And their equity on their home right now is probably the highest it's ever been.
Right, because of the market. The other one is probably stocks. A lot of people will sell some stocks to get it, especially again with the market, the way it is. A lot of people will do that. And another one is their 401k. Sometimes people don't like to use that because they are nervous about taking it out. But if you talk with your financial advisor, there's ways to work around some of the fees or the interest that you have to pay when you take it out. So number one, I usually tell people is the HELOC is usually what most people will want to use to put down.
Yeah. I would say the HELOC would be your first option if you currently own a home. With the 401k, I mean, if you think about it, I know that's kind of like, oh, take something out of my 401k, but you know, we were talking about this the other day. If you're a young family and you have a kid going into kindergarten and you can take out, you know, $20,000 out of your 401k to go buy, you know, $100,000 condo or something, and you put that on a 15-year note, by the time they graduate from high school, that thing should be paid off. At that time, it's worth $125,000. You sell it, you pay the taxes on it, and you have their whole college paid for. So I mean, you do that with as they're younger, and that's an investment. It's a good opportunity to get ahead. And you think of 401k for retirement and like the money you're going to need in the future, but you're just letting that money work for you in a different way.
Right. All right. Well, that ends our first video, but we're going to have a few more coming up. And the next one we're going to talk about is long-term rentals, because a lot of people always want to know the difference between long-term and short-term. So we're going to talk about that in the next one. See you soon.